As I mentioned in my channel teaser, I want to move this platform toward a place of positivity, especially during a time like the one we're currently experiencing. It's my belief that we're going to need a lot of good thoughts and reminders of our potential for goodness over the coming years. For the past few days, I've been thinking about what film or TV show to start my reviews with, but none of them seemed to feel right. Then, the choice just seemed to be made for me. On August 30th, I woke up, checked my phone, and read that actor Chadwick Boseman, the star of Marvel's Black Panther, among other titles, had passed away at the age of 43. I have to admit, for some reason this hit me really hard. It wasn't just that I really enjoyed his work. There was this accompanying feeling of despair that ran through my body, filtering everything else that I saw or did on that day. It certainly didn't put me in the mood to write a positive script for my first review. I sat on the couch, carelessly flipping through channels, when I saw that the movie 42 was on, and I had seen the film before. I chose to watch it, not knowing what impact it would have on me. Travel back in time with me a little bit, before August 30th, back to 2013 to be exact. You see, prior to playing T'Challa in Black Panther, a then fairly unknown actor named Chadwick Boseman took on the role of my idol, Jackie Robinson, in the movie 42. For the most part, I liked the film. You see, when I was much younger, I would read any and every biography that came out about Robinson. I was just so fascinated and enthralled by the man inside the uniform, from his time as a four-letter athlete at UCLA to his becoming a prominent executive of the Chock-full of Nuts company after he retired from baseball, where he continued to push for civil rights, writing a letter to then-President Dwight D. Eisenhower. Now, there was only one actor in my mind who could successfully pull off playing Jackie Robinson in a film, and that was, well, Jackie Robinson. Let's go even further back in time, to 1950. You see, back then, Jackie played himself in a film called The Jackie Robinson Story. It's a great movie, especially for that time. Think about it. At that point, the film is only 3 years removed from when he broke into the league. He was still playing. The film consists of a lot of language and images that romanticize what was a fairly traumatic and harsh experience when Jackie broke into the major leagues. And at one point in the film, the Dodgers announcer looks into the camera, at us, and he says, "In baseball, it's not who or what you are, but can you play the game?" This line and others like it in the film are geared toward the part of the audience in 1950 who still believed that African Americans did not belong in the major leagues. The cynical parts of us today might hear this line and think that it is, at best, quaint, and at worst, patronizing. But in 1950, it served an important purpose. The film was taking chances by showing that there were players and people in the Dodgers organization who were comfortable with Robinson being a part of the team. It also showed how quickly Dodgers fans could be swayed to embrace Jackie because of his heart, his hustle, and his talent. I appreciate this film for what it was trying to do, and for having the man himself play the role. If you've ever seen the baseball movies Cobb or Babe, you know that it isn't always easy for an actor, even accomplished ones, to pull off being a convincing ball player. Let's flash forward, back to 2013. 42 comes out. I'm excited, but with trepidation. I'm too close to the topic to enjoy it as just a film, but nonetheless, I do think it's mostly fine. It certainly does a more accurate job than the Jackie Robinson story in terms of showing how bad things became for Robinson, how uncomfortable the environment actually was for him and Rachel. My biggest pet peeve with 42 has to do with a directorial decision. You see, like the Robinson story, 42 is very much aware of its present-day audience. It wants to say something to them. Both romanticize some events in order to get a certain feeling across that they deem important to the life story. But, as the case is in Hollywood at times, these events are not necessarily historically accurate. For example, in 42, Pee Wee Reese says, "Maybe tomorrow we'll all wear number 42 so they can't tell us apart." Of course, today, we have Jackie Robinson Day in baseball, where all the players wear number 42. Again, the cynical parts of us that are distrustful of stories that try to make us feel might want to roll our eyes. However, there is truth in this moment. Some truth. The line was said to Robinson, and it was said by a teammate. However, it was not Pee Wee Reese who said it. It was Gene Hermansky. And director Brian Helgeland is on record as knowing this fact. He states, "Actually, it was Gene Hermansky who said it." He goes on to say, "But I didn't develop Gene as a character. I thought it was such a great line that I gave it to Pee Wee." These decisions happen all the time in Hollywood, but in this case, it just bothers me. Pee Wee Reese's positive interactions with Jackie Robinson are incredibly well documented and corroborated by Jackie, Rachel, and Reese themselves. However, if Helgeland had given this line, rightfully, to Hermansky, you show the audience that the Reeses of the world do not always have to stand alone. There are others who want to champion the cause. There are the Gene Hermanskys of the world. Although this choice still bothers me today, I want to reiterate that I largely still enjoy 42, especially when I saw it back in 2013. Let's flash forward again, back to August 30th, 2020, me on the couch, watching 42. I appreciate the way that Boseman dons the uniform of someone who, in my opinion, encapsulates so much of what I always wanted to be as a man. Someone with unquestionable integrity and enough love for others that he could keep his ego in check for the sake of a greater good. You see, something about Robinson that the movie actually captures quite well is that Jackie was not a man without ego. Yes, Branch Rickey told Robinson that he couldn't fight back against the onslaught of hate he would hear and feel, both on and off the field. But you have to understand, that's the part of Robinson that makes him akin to a superhero for me. He had to face something that was a very part of his character and defeat it, like a knight slaying a dragon. He took every horrific word said about him, every spike that penetrated his flesh from resentful players that would slide into him with their feet up, every news article that doubted whether or not he should be allowed to play in the major leagues. Jackie Robinson did, in fact, take these personally, and they cut him more deeply than any cleat ever could. Yet, this man knew that what he was doing was bigger than his ego, and he had the shoulders to carry that weight, with a lot of help from his loving wife, Rachel. Heavy was the head that wore his Dodgers cap. Boseman portrays this admirably in 42, but it isn't in the movie, where the two men seem to really coalesce into one. At various points over the past 2 years, pictures were leaked of Boseman looking thin, gaunt. Jokes were made at his expense on social media. Some people thought that he was simply altering his body for a specific film role. And, I'm happy to say, at the time some people did simply show some human concern. On August 30th, the day that he passed, stories were suddenly being released, and these are corroborated, that in 2018 Boseman visited the cancer ward at St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, bringing hope, love, and joy to those he met. You see, like Robinson, Boseman knew there are some things that are bigger than us, bigger than our egos, bigger than even the promise of our waking up the next day. When I read these astounding revelations about Boseman visiting St. Jude while he himself was struggling with stage 3 and then 4 of cancer, I immediately thought of Jackie Robinson's famous quote, "A life is not important except in the impact it has on other lives." This quote is on a poster that I keep of Jackie Robinson in my office. It reminds me when I teach that there are bigger, more important things in the world than my ego. Chadwick Boseman did not simply play the role of Jackie Robinson, he embodied him. We should all embody the spirit of Robinson and Boseman. Success for them both did not take away their responsibility to create good in the world, and good must be created around us until it suffocates the bad, until it pushes the clouds of hopelessness to the side, revealing a pathway to hope, laughter, and humanity. We are all tasked with creating good in the world. It doesn't have to be on the same levels as Robinson or Boseman. A well-timed smile, listening to someone who just wants to be heard, laughing with others instead of at them. We create good in the world every time we do these things. Boseman's death reminds me that sadness and grief can lead us, with proper reflection, to a place of gratitude. And gratitude can and should be a catalyst for our doing good. Boseman may not have been a real king, but he was certainly a prince.